Welcome to Modern Figures podcast, hosted by Dr. Jeremy Wasom
and Dr. Kyla McMullen, where we're elevating the voices of Black women in computing to inspire the next generation of Black female coders.
This podcast exists to highlight the stories of Black women in computing, inspire high schoolers and the young at heart, and dispel myths and preconceptions about Black women in computing. Kyla and I are from the Institute for African American Mentoring in Computing Sciences, or IMCS, which serves as a national resource for computing students, faculty, and industry professionals, funded by the National Science Foundation. Our goal is to increase the number of African Americans receiving doctoral degrees in the computing sciences, promote and engage students in teaching and training opportunities, and to add more diverse researchers into the advanced technology workforce.
This podcast is funded by the National Center for Women in Information Technology. NCWIT is a nonprofit that convenes, equips, and unites change leader organizations to increase the participation of all women in the field of computing.
Hashtag sponsorship. Amen.
Amen.
So, welcome Jamie Berger, our guest for today.
Yay! Thanks. Hi.
Jamie is a current graduate student at Michigan Technological University, and she's also the creator of Lyrics to Code, which is on Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Jamie.
Hey.
So we want to start with your background and kind of how you grew up. So if you could tell us a little bit about who you are and what life was like for you as a young child.
Life for me as a young child was pretty interesting. So I was adopted, but my biological mom's still in my life. Mm-hmm. So my biological mom actually got into a car accident when she was 16. And so she's very physically handicapped, and she does have a little bit of brain damage as well. And then when my guardian parents came into the picture, they gained custody of me by also choosing to take care of my mother.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
So I'm from Ann Arbor, Michigan, and so right. So my guardian mom went to U of M to learn how to care for my biological mother. Wow. And so she's basically been her caretaker, or whatever you want to call it, since then. And so she was able to take me in too, and then I just grew up like that.
One big happy family.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
That is really cool.
So it's fun whenever I go home. I'm like, I can't wait to see my moms, and everybody's like, wow, progressiveness, they're lesbian, and I'm like, well, that's great, but that's not exactly the case here. So
that's fine. That's fine. That's wonderful though.
Yeah.
So did anything about how you grew up inspire you to pursue computer science?
Not so much. So growing up, I've always been good at math and things like that. Apparently my senior year of high school, they started a computer science program at my high school, but nobody told me about it. I was in AP Calculus, AP Statistics, and AP Physics, and AP German, but you'd think that with those combination of topics, somebody would have been like, wow, you might be interested in computer science, right. You know? But nobody really came to me with that. So I didn't find out about computer science until my junior year of college, undergrad.
Wow, that's really far in.
Very.
That's you're almost done.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah, so I did get my undergraduate degree in math with a minor in computer science.
Okay.
And then when I was applying to graduate school, the kind of work that I was writing essays about, they were like, you should do computer science. And I was like, all right, that's what you say.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
So did you do anything that was science related extracurricularly while you were in high school, or did it all kind of fall into place while you were in college?
So it mostly fell into place when I was in college. So when I was in high school, I was very about track. I ran track, and I was like, I ran the 400, okay, and I was like, this is my life. But then,
track is life. Okay.
Yeah. But then I tore my meniscus twice in my right knee, and at that point I was like, oh man, I can't depend on my body anymore. My surgeon told me that I can't run competitively anymore.
Oh, wow.
And I'd always gotten good grades, so that wasn't an issue. But I was super sad and depressed about that, because I was like, this this is my life. What am I going to do? And then that's when I decided that I should just like really just keep studying and be smart. Use my brain.
Okay.
And my mom's always been that kind of woman that's like, your looks will fade and your brain will stay strong forever. So
Not necessarily true, but yeah.
yeah. So, you
Decent
know,
advice.
Right.
I kind of had no choice there but to continue on with my studies and kind of depend on my brain. So when I started undergrad, I wanted to be an architect.
Cool.
I
Team civil
wonder.
engineer over here, so
Yeah.
I can't slight you for that, except you didn't really have the science in your heart, which is okay.
Yeah, no, I wanted to build dream homes. So I started at University of South Florida
Okay.
because all three of my older brothers went to school there. So I was like, I want to
From-
be like them.
From Michigan, or
No,
were
they-
elsewhere?
They're like 20 plus years older than me.
Oh,
So
wow.
they grew up with like a military dad and moved around the world. And then
Oh,
by
wow.
the time they were like in late high school, they were in Florida. So that was kind of like their local
Yeah.
school.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So I just wanted to be like them and move to Florida. And then after 2 years, I was like, this place is hot and
It is bad. That's
it's
true.
humid and it just rains and there's no freaking seasons.
No,
So-
we don't have a lot of tree foliage changing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty rough for me. At first, I thought I hated seasons, and then I didn't have seasons, and I was like, wow, I really love seasons.
Yeah.
So I moved back to Michigan, and I was hoping to go to the U of M because that's in my hometown.
Mm-hmm.
But they wouldn't accept a lot of credits from USF.
Interesting.
And that was super expensive to go there.
Yeah.
So I ended up going to Eastern Michigan
Oh
University.
yeah, EMU.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
And at first, I was a little disappointed, like, EMU, you know, I grew up in, like, the world of, like, Wolverines.
Yeah.
I actually really, really enjoyed it there because, one, I found out about computer science.
Hey,
So,
that's cool.
yeah, by that point, I had decided that I wanted to be a math major. And in the math major, they required an intro to programming class.
Cool.
And I was super scared because I was like, what's programming? I had no idea what it was. I was like, all I know is this involves computers. And at EMU, sometimes like the classrooms aren't open before class starts, so you end up just like waiting in the hallway. And I remember sitting in the hallway and kind of like, not to like bring in the stereotypes, but I saw some really nerdy looking kids. And I was like, yo, what is this class gonna be? Like, they look like they know what they're doing, and I don't know what this is.
Sounds like a little bit of imposter syndrome, maybe.
Just saying.
And it probably definitely was.
Some implicit
Yeah.
biases.
I had no idea what to expect, but then I guess most computer scientists, I assume, have this idea that like, oh, you know, my first Hello World program and it all made sense. And it kind of like was like that for me. I was like, oh, this is programming. And my teacher, or my professor, she was a female. And she was super awesome. She's from India, and she would always talk about how where she's from, it's mostly women
Yep.
who are in computer science.
Yeah.
And she would always talk about how strange it is that, you know, there were so few students in her class. Or
Females.
female
Yeah,
students,
female.
yeah, not students,
Yeah.
female students. And I was like, yeah, this is kind of weird. So we knew that there were different women in computer science clubs at other universities. So her and I actually worked together to found the one at EMU.
Cool.
Wow.
Very cool.
So you're like
Yeah.
the founder of, what's the name of the group?
Women in computer science at Eastern Michigan University.
That's awesome.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's not the first time I've heard that. Like, I had an Indian friend in grad school say that, you know, in India that it was mostly computer science for the women and computer engineering for the men, and that was the division. And I'm like, here, it's like, can we just get people in computer anything? Women in computer something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of sparked my interest in computer science, and I thought about switching my major to computer science, but I stuck with a minor because I wanted to graduate.
You were pretty
Yeah.
far in when you
Yeah.
found it.
Yeah.
And bills are real.
Yeah, and I just
true,
really
true.
wanted to be done in that 4-year mark, so stuck with math, computer science minor, still I served as the president of Women in Computer Science until I graduated, and then I also became the first female president of the math club at EMU.
Oh, wow.
So that was really fun.
How many of you were there, like, in your math program? Were you kind of isolated in that program?
Math actually was a lot more diverse than the computer science program. There are a lot of females and a lot of people of color, so that was really awesome. I felt always like pretty normal in those classes. And my professors in the math department were really cool. There's definitely a few where, you know, I'd love to go back and hang out with them, but I think some of them are retired now, so I don't know if that's an option.
What inspired you to go to graduate school, Jamie?
So to be frank, I wanted to go to graduate school because I didn't want to work. But it turns out I ended up working way harder, so.
You never know. You never really know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I was applying to graduate school, I didn't really have an idea of research. I didn't get to have any undergraduate research experiences.
Okay.
And I didn't know that research was like a huge part of graduate school. So I was really into fighter type video games. So I'm talking like Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and Tekken Tag Tournament 2.
Okay.
I like to mess that stuff up. Those are my games for sure.
Okay, good to know.
And, you know, a diehard PlayStation fan, so, you know, it was just, that's what I was about. And I was like, this is what I'm going to graduate school for.
Right.
And I'm going to, like, make this system that, you know, so the characters in the games have different, like, strength levels and different abilities. And I'm like, what if you like some weak players, right? But you still want to win. I wanted to come up with a system that would help people create statistically probable. I had to make it sound smart, right?
Math.
Statistically probable ways of like winning with their weak characters when they're playing against maybe like the most strongest characters. So that's what I went into graduate school about, and everybody was like, we don't know this in math, you need to go to computer science. And I was like, all right, if that's what you say, that's what I'm gonna do. And then once I actually got accepted and put into the program, they're like, you're not doing this. And I was like, oh, now what?
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah,
hey.
girl, hey, this
Right?
Whatever.
Right? They were like, we don't know about this. And I was like, listen, I can teach you. We can go to my house right now, play some PlayStation. You know?
And I will destroy you with the weakest player.
Exactly. So, yeah, that's pretty much what inspired me to go to graduate school, to be honest.
I mean, no shade. That's actually pretty cool that you were inspired by video games to do research.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's many people's story.
I was inspired by clothes. To do research.
Clothes.
Yeah, I wanted to make a program that was like a virtual, like a stylist.
Okay.
So you would enter
They do that now.
Yeah, and you would enter in your clothes, you would scan it. That was my senior project.
You were ahead of your time.
I really was.
That's
I really was. But then I got to school and they were like, there's no research in that. And I'm like, what?
Maybe there's no money. There's no grant money.
Right, there's no grant money. That's what that translates to.
Yeah.
I can't write some grant corporation and, you know, get money for this. And they're like, if you can write it in the context of a constraint satisfaction problem, then perhaps. But I wasn't willing to sell out my idea. But no, I feel you for going to grad school for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
They're not the wrong reasons. They're just not the actual reasons that would get you a degree
This is true.
at
Right.
graduate school.
Yeah.
But how do you know that, right?
Yeah, you don't know that.
Nobody
Gotta set a
really
door.
knows.
Right.
Yeah. So, why grad school? You know, I get not wanting to work. But, I mean, you could have married rich or...
I'm not about that
Yeah,
marrying rich stuff. That's not me.
I see that. Me either.
I like to hold my own, you know?
I feel you. Strong black woman over here.
That's
Strong
it.
black lead.
Yep.
I could
It's
be
the
in
goal.
a movie. Yeah, we'll see. One day, maybe. So, what's grad school like for you? Like,
Yeah.
what is that experience like? You don't have to tell us everything, but
Yeah.
maybe the high points, you know?
The high points? Well, the high points would definitely be I've gotten a lot of exposure and a lot of like networking. I think that's really cool. I don't know if I would have gotten that otherwise because I have lived in Michigan for most of my life and I love Michigan, but it's not really like a place where you're meeting all these like powerful people everywhere. So grad school did give me an opportunity to travel and network and go to conferences, just like a whole nother world that I didn't even know existed.
That's how we met you, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And here I am today. So
very cool.
So that's something that like I feel really happy that, you know, I got to experience and I'm still experiencing. And I am learning a lot more about computer science, that's for sure. Like, when I started, I didn't really know that much. Like, only having a minor in it, I didn't realize how little I knew about computer science. And when you go to graduate school, you still have some coursework to go through. And there are all these breadth requirements. So you can't just, like, take all the classes that
you want to take.
Exactly. You have to like take all this other like stuff that I don't understand and sounds like another language to me.
It is another language actually.
Yeah.
Technically it is.
Yeah. So I was like, oh man, you know, I got pretty nervous. Like, what is all this stuff?
Maybe a few additional languages.
Yeah. But it turned out to be like really fun. Like I liked the coursework, most of it. And I found out a lot about also like data science in the process.
Okay, cool.
So I do really like data programming. And I didn't know that I would enjoy something like that before. But I guess with my math background it makes sense.
What's the distinction for you between computer science and data programming? Like what, or data science, like what would you say to people distinguishes the two?
I would say data science is more of like, you're trying to like extract information from something that already is kind of like out there and exists, but there's no clear pattern to it or no clear way of like distinguishing what all of this hullabaloo might mean. It's like we got it, but what do we do with it? And I feel like data science cleans that up and is like, this is what you can do with it. This is what you can make sense out of all of this random information. So makes information make sense. So
it's like basically you have this bag of data, and data science is like, all right, let's make some meaning out of this. What can we conclude from these things?
Exactly. And then I think computer science, a lot of people think about it as just programming, but programming is actually a very small part of my schedule. I'd say computer science is more of like the analytical way of like looking at how computers work together and how to like maintain systems and really find out the power, like the trying to say this in a smart way, but it's not coming to mind.
No, I mean, I think you're doing a good
but
job.
yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it's a lot more theory. I guess that's the best way for me to put it. You're more like theorizing about computers and what they can do as opposed to just like programming and creating stuff with the computer that's already there.
Kyla, Dr. Kyla, you got any additional feedback?
No, that's I'm just nodding in agreement. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm the non-computer scientist in the room, so I gotta check with the subject matter experts on this stuff.
And the thing is, like, computing's different for every person. Like, because research projects are different, and like, you know, basically you're using a computer to solve problems.
Correct.
Like, and there's a broad spectrum.
And there's several different disciplines that go into that process.
Exactly.
Including computer science and data science.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is it data or data?
I say data. I think it's
I feel like data is very elitist. I don't know.
Well, haters gonna hate. Anyways. So, what does being a graduate student mean to you? How would you tell like some of our listeners who might be in high school or middle school what that looks like?
I'd say being a graduate student is learning how to be 3 people at once. You have to be a researcher, you still have to be a student with your coursework, and then you also have to be a teacher. I don't think everybody has to teach, but I do think that most graduate students do end up teaching at some point, or at least grading at some point in their career.
I'd go with that.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's all about like finding that balance between those things, and then even possibly tacking on some extracurriculars on top of that. So it's a busy life,
Yeah.
but you know, you learn to become this like multifaceted person, and you're almost like a business person too, because you have to somewhat sell your research and prove that this is something that's valuable and will be valuable to not just you graduating, but to everybody in the world. I mean,
Yeah. At the
you know.
time you graduate, you are the foremost expert in that one little tiny narrow space that you chose to do your research in. So
Yeah.
Exactly.
But if anybody ever walks into that space, that is your domain. And you can say, no, let me tell you how it goes.
Right.
That's
right.
cool. I like to tell people the distinction between undergraduate and graduate school is really that unlike going to college where they have all of these things that they have to teach you because maybe they are an accredited institution or they have like guidelines and rules that they must follow. Graduate school is different in that they want you to become an expert.
Yeah.
So undergrad, it's like, I need you to know all these things about your field.
Mm-hmm.
And graduate school is, I want you to be the best at this
Right.
Right.
small piece.
And the person who's helping you become the best may not even know the answers.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
being comfortable figuring out the answers together. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Because in undergrad, it's like, okay, do this homework assignment, X equals 5, you get a star. Versus, hey, I really don't know what's the best way to solve this computer problem. Let's go ahead and look at all the options and do some metrics and discover the answer.
Yeah, so you get to be more creative, like a designer.
What? Computer science is creative?
What?
Yes, very creative. You have to be.
Yeah.
It's an art.
I'm telling you it is.
So, how is it an art? Like, what would you say about it makes it artistic? Because people don't necessarily see the sciences as artistic
Or creative or anything.
creative.
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
So you're basically turning nothing into something. When even if you're just a programmer, like, I don't mean to say like just a programmer, but even if that's like all you're doing, like you're still turning an idea into something physical that people can use.
That's true.
And, you know, as much as, you know, algorithms makes me cry in the middle of the night, it is an art form to be able to come up with these sequence of, you know, instructions that terminate and repeat, and they're unambiguous. Like, that takes a lot of work and a lot of creativity to even figure that out. It's not, algorithms aren't something that's always like pre-made. It's something that you have to design yourself to make sense of something that's kind of invisible in your head, and you want other people to be able to see and understand that.
Yeah. So actually that sounds a lot to me like music, right? And like how you compose music, because you literally have to like come up with a system of notes and things, you know, on a measure
Yeah.
to create something like that's innovative and new that no one has ever heard before.
Right.
It's like composing music to me.
And it has to sound nice, right? It can't just be some hopple squash of like, because that's not pretty.
And the other thing is, like, everybody and how they write code is different, right? And so we all have like a different voice in how you would write your code, right?
Yeah.
Like a different syntax, what it looks like in terms of like the spacing, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it is in a way very musical,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which segues kind of nicely into lyrics to code. So where did that come from? And can you try to like explain to people, I know it's going to be kind of hard for them without a visual to understand, but explain what that is.
Okay, so lyrics to code is taking song lyrics and turning it into snippets of syntactical code. So I usually use the Java language. I've used Python a little bit too. But I take basic structures in Java and or Python, like if statements or loops, and also variables. And I will replace things that could be, so when you're coding,
I told you it's gonna be kind of
when you're coding, there are certain words that are reserved for that language, so you can't change those. But then everything else, you pretty much name yourself. And so when I make lyrics to code, those things that you can name yourself, I turn into different parts of song lyrics. And so when you read it, it cohesively looks like, you know, maybe like the chorus of a song, or, you know, a really good line in the song that I love, and it just punches and you're like, yeah, that pumps me up.
Right.
So
It's almost like a little puzzle too sometimes. Like when I see it, I'm like, what could this be?
And it's funny you say that. It's kind of like a puzzle. I've had maybe 3 different schools, one a high school and 2 college, or 2 colleges, universities, who have come to me and been like, yeah, we show this to students to have them guess what song it is. So it's like a fun activity that we do with the kids, or that we do in this certain club, and I'm like, whoa, I didn't think it would go that far. That's really cool that you guys do that.
Yeah, so you're on Instagram.
Oh yeah.
How many followers do you think you have? And do you think it's because of Lyrics to Code that you've started to get all of this kind of momentum behind you?
So I have 4,300 right now, and I would say actually back in February, every single day of the month I posted a different Black computer scientist.
Oh yeah,
That's true.
Kyla was in there. And just talked about their achievements and what they did, and you know, I had little funky stuff in there like, oh, why is Silicon Valley attributed to white and Asian men when the godfather of Silicon Valley is this black man? And everybody's like, whoa, I've never heard of this. And I'm like, well, you should. So I think that is what really sparked a bunch of followers to like come in. They're like, oh, wow, you know, this girl is about diversity.
Yeah.
And she does Lyrics to Code. What is this? This is cool. So Lyrics to Code didn't really spark the huge following to begin with, but I think it's a reason why people still keep coming back, because they're like, this is funny, this is cute, and they like send it to their friends and stuff. And I think it just adds an element of like fun to my page, so it's not always like serious.
And also you're adorable, so that helps. You know, I'm pretty sure that's part of the reason people are still following you too.
Oh my gosh.
This is an adorable picture. She's like always out in the wilderness of Michigan, hiking. She literally takes her cat on walks, people.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, yes.
Yeah, but yeah, I love taking my cat on hikes. I love hiking. That's like, I feel like sometimes people like associate computer people with, you know, just wanting to be inside, playing video games, even though, you know, I do like that. But truly, right? But truly what gets, you know, my heart pumping and my brain fresh is just going out in nature and going on a hike. Yeah. It just feels so good, and it's beautiful, and you know, there's no one else around you but the fresh air, and you just breathe it in. And
the fresh cold air.
Well, it's not always cold in Michigan. We do have summertime. Remember, I was talking about the seasons earlier. We get all of it.
Called July. No,
and we have the Great Lakes, so we have real water. Sorry guys, but in Florida it's not the same.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not. You guys do not have fresh water here.
Yes, we do. We have springs, natural springs.
We have the Great Lakes.
That's not the same. We have a giant lake too, Lake Okeechobee.
It is not.
And it's a swamp. It's a swamp, so let's not talk about it. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Let's bring this back to Lyrics to Code and your social media stuff.
Yeah, like with their social media, the thing that I love is that you're a grad student and you show the whole grad student life. Like, you know, there's pictures of you and you're like, number one, I'm like, you must have a timer or something where you like set it up and you're like at your desk, you're drinking coffee, you're reading, you're coding. Like, I'm like, man, this is exactly, every time I see it, I'm like, this was me the whole time. And it's just reminiscent of my time there. And it's like, almost like you're glamorizing being a grad student.
No, I feel like she talks about some of the more difficult things too.
Oh, definitely. But just bringing a visual aid to like literally being that visual piece that people can say, this is what grad school is like. Like there are little girls who look like you who are just like, oh, she's coding, and she like just having this visual hanger that you can just see and have this thing in your head to say, oh, she's doing this, I can do it. Like it's sometimes imagery is so important, and just the fact that you have so much positive imagery around coding and around computing, it's like, it's really cool.
Thanks so much. And yes, I do use a timer on my phone. You know, I always tell people this, I'm a broke college student, so I don't have like these big fancy cameras anywhere. I don't have a photographer. I actually decline any kind of sponsorships, so yeah, I just am really about having a natural, organic following. I don't want people to follow me just because I sponsored such and such, you know.
So no flat tummy tea.
Yeah, no, none of that. I like to show people, you know, what it's really like, and I don't want to ever have to put out a front because I've sponsored this company. You know, I still want to be me and not have to like change that for anything. So I do use my Android device. I'm just throwing that out there, you iPhone users.
We're team iPhone on this side of the table.
I know, Hair's gonna hate though, right?
I guess so.
But yeah, and I just click on a timer. I bought this little $8 tripod from Walmart because that's the only store we have in the UP. And you know, and that's all I use to take my pictures and, you know, do my thing.
For those of you not familiar with the UP is the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So Michigan looks like a hand, and then there's like there's a foot that's on the side of it.
Wait, what?
What kind of
Michigan
foot
goes
looks
like this? It's like this.
It's your right hand is the lower peninsula and your left hand's the upper peninsula. I consider this part, I don't know if you can see in the camera, I consider this upper part of the upper peninsula where my thumb is at, I call that the shark fin of the upper peninsula.
Is that where you are?
And that is where I live.
So the Canada, basically.
Yeah, but you know, surrounded by a beautiful lake with fresh water.
The shade. Oh, the shade.
I'm so glad we wore this shirt. I'm so glad we
I know, I
wore
thought
this
it was perfect.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, no, I live in like the most northern tip of Michigan that you could possibly live. So it's we get a lot of weather.
I really feel like we should just drive her out to one of our springs so she can just experience the nature here.
Your life will be changed.
It will.
I don't know about
It's
that.
like a natural lazy river.
Yeah.
But how many waterfalls do you have?
What? We don't have elevation.
Right,
we're talking about.
Florida's flat.
We have Florida.
We have
drips.
cliffs and
Water
hills
drips.
and skiing.
You can water ski
Yeah.
in a not fresh Great Lake situation. Okay, so
Back to it.
Yeah. I'm sorry. So you talked about like how you kind of have a following and you have this messaging that you're sending out there and it's very positive.
Yeah.
And I do think you spend a lot of time kind of dispelling myths and also countering like stereotypes.
Yeah.
And have you experienced that as you've kind of moved through math and computer science?
Oh, yeah.
Is that a reason why you talk about that on your social media page?
Yeah, because whenever I tell somebody what I do, they're like either surprised, like they wouldn't expect me to do that, or they're like, you have a great personality, how do you fit in? And I'm just like, well, right, you know, like not everybody in math and computing has these like boring personalities, and that's also something that like I share a lot in on my Instagram, especially when I do like live sessions, is I'll tell people, you know, you don't have to be this serious, head in the books all the time kind of person when you're in graduate school. Like, you can still have fun, you can be bubbly, and people are probably gonna like attract you a lot more that way anyway. So don't ever feel like just because you have a personality you can't be in computing. A lot of it is talking to other people. I teach Intro to Java right now, and we require paired programming because we're like, well, you're going to do this in the real world. You might as well gain a personality now and learn how to work with people, you know?
Gain a personality.
I mean, I don't even think that's a hater statement. That's real. That's real life.
You know, because a lot of students are like, well, I just want to work on my own. And it's like, well, it's not always going to be that way. You're not always going to be working by yourself.
Most jobs are not that way.
Yeah.
You're not going to program things by yourself. Things are team-based. And actually, for here, when we have our recruitment visits, I have my students go to the recruiters as part of an assignment to find out what are the skills, you know, forget the technical things. What are the skills the students are lacking? And it's teamwork. Like, they're saying students don't know how to work in teams. They don't know how to work together to solve a problem. There's very much of this, like you said, this individualistic, I want to work on my thing and not have to worry about anyone else. But that is not the real world. You have to pair program. Like, that is the best practice, you know.
Yeah, we used to call them soft skills, but that's ridiculous.
Because they hard.
It's not that they're hard. It's just, it kind of devalues them, right? And so those are professional skills, people.
Exactly.
Professional skills, and you need them to be a professional, right, in the workplace.
Yeah.
So it's very cool that you kind of talk about those things.
Yeah.
And how being unique in a space isn't bad.
Right.
Right? It's valuable, it's useful, and we need more of you.
And I would feel like, as a grad student, I think I was afraid to be this outgoing. I've always been outgoing, but I don't think I would have ever done it on this level, because I feel like there's this sort of tendency to want people to think of you as the serious person, and any part of your personality that you show is something that's counter to this. And I love the fact that you are 100% yourself all the time, and your brand is, look, I'm out here, I'm doing this, but guess what, I can code too, and I can do this. You know, you're showing things counter to that narrative.
Yeah, and you know, I think in my bio it says something like, I'm your favorite optimistic black, you know, graduate student in computer science. But then also in some of my posts I definitely talk about the hard times too, because it isn't always just like rainbows and bubblegum. I mean, it's grad school. So there's definitely times where I feel really down, and I don't post like, oh, I'm sad, you know, like, you should make me feel better. It's more of like, this happens, but you'll work your way out of it, and it's not a big deal, you know. But I just like everybody to know that, like, even though I am this bubbly person all the time, like, it gets real too sometimes.
Life
so
happens.
I like to be really explicit about that, so people don't just like follow me and decide that they want to go into graduate school or go into computer science and think that it's going to be this like big ball of fun all the time. Like, I like them to know that there's a mix, there's ups and downs.
Jamie, what are you passionate about? Like, what kind of inspires you?
I love to teach. That's like that's like my number one passion, my number one inspiration for like everything. Like, when I was I just said like 30 times, my bad.
It's okay. It's probably my fault for the earlier about-year-old thing on the break.
But when I was a kid, I used to, well, I think everybody does this when they can't fall asleep, so they just lay there and like daydream a little bit. I was always daydreaming about being a teacher.
I don't think anyone does. Well, okay.
Well, okay, maybe not about being a teacher, but like daydreaming in general. Yeah. No, I don't think everybody daydreams about being a teacher. But I did. And so, I never really like thought about it as something that I wanted to do, which is so strange considering that's like what I was consistently daydreaming about. And and then when I started graduate school, I was like, man, I get to teach a lot more. I love this. And before I started graduate school, I was a math tutor, and that kind of is like some pseudo teaching that made me feel really good. So when I actually got my own classroom, I was like, wow, I love this stuff. So teaching has definitely become my passion. I mean, my research is computer science education, so I'm really into figuring out how people learn things and the best way for people to learn things, especially when I was doing math. A lot of people are like, I hate math, I suck at math, and I'm like, that's because you haven't had the right teacher. Because everybody's really good at math. Math is every single thing around you, so it's kind of impossible for you to like suck at it. You know, you just have to like have the right like spark in your mind, the right way to like something that somebody needs to tell you to like make it make sense. Because I wasn't always good at math either. It was probably like my 8th grade math teacher. He was really awesome and like took the time to like explain things to me in a way that I understand, and then from there on I like totally got math. It just like clicked. And I think that there is somebody like that for everybody, and I want to be that person.
Cool. Yeah. So what about CS education do you research?
So my research is involved with the Native American population specifically.
Ooh.
There's a reservation about 30 minutes south of campus.
Wow.
And so starting this January, I'll be going out there like 4 times a week to work with kids and teach them computer science.
Wow.
And a big part of my research is finding a way to teach computer science in such a way that it doesn't diminish their traditional values and their culture. Because a lot of things, and especially a lot of research, tends to do that.
Yep.
So I'm trying to find a really respectful way to go about my research and really uplift the community and kind of put them first. As opposed to putting my research first, I want to put their community first and really help them build up and preserve everything that they lost. So
Does this fall under the umbrella of culturally relevant computing?
a little bit, yeah. Definitely more like, I would say like cultural based instead of culturally relevant. Because I think relevant just finds a way to like mix it in, whereas like cultural based takes from the people who live there and experience that and are Native American and takes their knowledge and creates meaning for their population of what computer science is. So I'm not coming in like, this is computer science, this is what you need to know. I'm like, tell me what your culture and what your people know, and then we will together create this meaning of computer science as it applies to you and what's important to you.
That's really amazing because, like you said, most people come in with this approach of I'm going to tell you versus let me listen to what's important to you, your norms and your customs, and let's make something out of that. So
Right.
I like that approach.
I do think it falls into culturally relevant computing, which is like part of the whole human-centered computing world, right?
Yeah.
Where you have to understand people
Yeah.
to be able to implement technologies, right?
Yeah.
So I do see it kind of as that. And
Yeah.
I think immersing yourself in another culture is a very noble thing that most people aren't willing to do.
It takes a lot of patience. A big part of my research is that I do have to get it approved by the tribal council. If I don't, then I'm not really doing the right thing by their people. So it's a lot of patience.
That's beautiful, though.
But it's good work. Yeah.
Do you
It
have
makes
any-
me feel good.
Do you have any ties to like the Native American population? Like what made you choose this specific area?
So when I started at Michigan Tech, I'm the only black person in my department, and there are no black professors. We do have one now. She's super awesome. She's in humanities, though.
Okay.
But, you know, I was like the only one, and I was like, wow, why is it this way? And so I had switched research gears to want to do broadening participation kind of research.
Which is just diversifying
Exactly.
Yeah.
the space that you're in.
Yes. But there's no black people, there's no Hispanic people, so I was like, dang, who do I work with if nobody's here?
How do you broaden things if there's no one broader at your institution?
Right? And my first year at Michigan Tech, I actually did get to go out to the reservation and work with some kids there. And then I was like, oh, wow, like the Native American population, why didn't this like come to mind right away? And it's just because their issues with like, you know, the education system in our country as a whole is completely different than, you know, what us as black people have to go through. Totally different. And so learning all of that wasn't really something that like came to mind right away, but once I decided to do it, it's just turned into this huge experience. So when I worked with those kids my first year, it was a group of third graders. And I said, hey, go on Google and go to scratch.mit.edu. And they all looked at me like I was crazy. They were like, what? And,
Like
you
what?
know.
Like what part of it was crazy?
Right.
Yeah, clicking on Google, typing in a URL. They didn't
okay.
know what I was saying. And,
Interesting.
you know, like, even if you're working with other, you know, minority communities, you can say go on Google and they know what you mean.
Yeah.
So these kids were just totally like, you're going to have to break it down. So, you know, I had to hop on the computer, pull out the little projector and be like, this is, you know, step by step. And eventually I would just pull up Google ahead of time on all the computers so that they didn't have to worry about that part. And we
So
could
they
just go
had
out to business.
computers, but
At the school.
Okay, at the
high
school.
school.
So you had third graders at a high school, and you were teaching them in that space because that was the only space that they had access to computers on the reservation.
Yep.
Wow.
So the Native American population has really high numbers of like mobile use, like you know, mobile phones and things like that, more than any other racial community. And so it's not like something where they aren't trying to adopt technology. It's just computers, for some reason, I don't know yet, I hope to figure it out, is not as prevalent. So, of course, when you think about that, I mean, how can you program on a mobile device? It's a lot more difficult.
Yeah, it's so difficult.
Doesn't really come to mind. So, yeah, not too many people have large access. And the region that I live in, their broadband prices are the second highest in the country.
Wow.
The highest is Hawaii. That makes sense, right? They're in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
But then in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, we're still in mainland.
Yeah.
You know, like, is it so expensive?
I'm just kidding.
I know. But it's like, wow, like, why is it like this?
Yeah.
It's because it's so rural. And, you know, it's not exactly the most wealthy area, so
it's a challenge that you have to overcome
definitely
regularly to ensure these students have the opportunities that most students have in the rest of the country.
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's really what inspired me to like work with their population and keep going back down to the reservation to be like, okay, you know, I'll be the one to teach you guys this, and but I'm not just going to do it with me and my Western ideals of society. I'm going to bring in people who are important to you guys, and we're going to work on this together.
That's so wonderful.
Yeah, what are some of the most like surprising things that you found out from this work? 'Cause like you said, you go in with your own sort of Western ideas of what teaching computing looks like. But like, I know you mentioned that Google, you know, telling them to go into Google was something that you didn't anticipate having to like break down. Is there any other like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this kind of moments?
So I thought that going onto a Native American reservation, everybody would be like super native, if that makes sense, you know, like
that makes sense.
They're all speaking Ojibwe because that's the tribe up there, and you know, I don't know, I kind of had quite a few stereotypes in my mind, like they dress a certain way, act a certain way, and it's not like that at all. They're extremely Americanized, and that just goes back to their history. They're super patriotic because they were beaten into it.
Wow.
So a lot of people don't even have their culture with them. You can meet a lot of adults who don't know a lick of Ojibwe because they went through like the boarding school era where, you know, if people don't know about that, that's when our government took children out of their homes and away from their parents and put them into these schools with these Catholic teachers, and they didn't allow them to speak their language. They didn't allow them to practice any of their traditions, and if they did, then they would get beat. And I'm talking about like 5-year-old kids physically harmed, and so people were scared to, you know, be who they are, and you can still see that in adults today. So that was definitely something that was super shocking to me because you don't learn that in history class.
Nope.
They don't tell you about that. So it's definitely a big learning process, learning about how how the people are, how they were treated in history, because like I just said a second ago, we don't learn that stuff. So hearing these first-hand accounts of, you know, how people have been treated, how people have been taken out of their homes and adopted off to, you know, different white families, and, you know, also not being in touch with their culture. There's a lot of things going on. And I didn't also realize that diabetes is actually like a really big issue.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
You always kind of hear about like the drunk Indian, so you kind of assume that maybe like alcoholism is their main problem, which it is also very prevalent, but diabetes was a big shocker for me. I didn't realize that they weren't getting all the right health information and good like nutrient filled foods. I'm not a health person.
No, that's fine.
I wonder why why is it? I mean, is it just because that's America's problem and they're just, you know, part of this American issue, or are there other factors at play?
I think being, at least for this population that's by me, I think being in an isolated area is definitely part of it. Especially with the long winters that we have, it's hard to farm.
Yeah.
So they are really big into wild ricing and growing, you know, their own vegetables, and that's really hard to do when you live in like, you know, the kind of super snowy.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
When your crops freeze, it's like, okay, you can't eat ice, so.
Yep, and then, you know, the things that are shipped up to grocery stores, most of the grocery stores in the UP are locally owned. So, you know, I'm sure they're not getting all the best things there either. You know, there's no Whole Foods.
Oh, wow.
Nothing like that, no Plum Market, so no Trader Joe's, nothing like that. So, I imagine that's part of it. I don't want to say, that's not something that I've researched and been saying is a fact, but I think that's maybe could be possibly part of why that's such a huge issue there.
It's like almost like a food desert.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, a rural food desert, which is an interesting situation.
And then another difficult part has been when you do research with kids, you know, you typically need to involve the parents. And that's something that's also been quite a big difficulty, is because a lot of students don't even live with their parents. They live with neighbors. It's very, you'll hear like Americans talk about, oh, back in the day, you know, everybody was your parent, and, you know, the community helps to raise the children. And that's what it's like there. You know, the community works together to raise the kids.
Yeah.
It's not always put on the parents, because the parents might be working elsewhere, or they might be, you know, unfortunately in jail or something like that, where they don't really get to be with their parents all the time. So when I, you know, come up with my consent forms and want to send them via email, you know, things like that don't really work out. It's a very in-person kind of place. Even working with the tribal council or working with the tribal college, it's really hard to get in touch with people if I'm not on the reservation. So that's a pretty big difficulty that I have to kind of deal with, and it's, you know, trying to get my advisor to ride along too. Be like, yeah, man, I have to go out there to get this done.
It sounds like you've learned a lot through this experience, and it's helped you kind of change your lens and how you view the world.
Absolutely.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, 100%.
So I want to end this talking about kind of what your social media and the things that you've been doing have led to. And I know that you were recently selected as a Black Compute Her Fellow, which is super cool. So Black Compute Her is a group that is dedicated to supporting computing and STEM education, workforce development for Black women and girls. So you want to talk about that a little bit and what your experience has been? I know it's new, so you may not have a lot of information, but...
Yeah, so we're the first group of fellows, so yeah, it is very new. But what we do is every month we have a 2-hour-long session where we all get together via Zoom online and have video chat, and we have a special guest. who teaches us something new. And it's, I want to say every one of them has been a Black woman. And so I had to think about it for a second, but I'm pretty sure they all have. And they'll talk about different things in technology. So whether it's business or data science or whatever they do, that's what they talk about. Okay. And so they have a cool like PowerPoint presentation, and we get to see them and ask them questions, and it's just very like back and forth. And it's just like a really nice community to be part of, because all of these girls, we see each other every month, you know, via online. And we just get to, before we actually start the real, you know, in-depth conversation, we kind of share things that are going on in our lives. So does anybody have anything exciting that they want to share? And then we all like congratulate each other, and we're like, good job, girl, you know? So it's a really cool way that like I've made friends and, you know, another network. And so I love being part of it. And it's given me some great opportunities, especially Dr. Jamaica Berger. This past summer, she asked me to help her out. She was working with Black Girls Rock to do this camp called Girls Rock Tech. And so we had a group of middle school and high school young Black girls come in and learn about leadership and computer science. And she asked me to teach the computer science portion. And that was super duper fun. And so that was like a really cool opportunity that came out of Black Compute Her and like having that network.
That and all the skills that you've gained through your research, teaching kids how to code. So that's amazing that you've had the opportunity.
So for other people, like, so you've done a really good job using social media for your brand. So what advice would you give someone who's like, hey, I want to put myself out there, I want to be known as a certain thing? Like, what would you tell them to do?
First, definitely find what makes you unique. There's, you know, quadrillions of people on Instagram, so...
Is that a real number, a mathematician?
It's not, but
it's
you
1,000 bajillion.
1,000 bajillions, okay, got it.
Continue.
There's a lot of people on Instagram. So you have to really find out what makes you stick out. So for me, it happens to be being like a super smiley Black girl in computer science that makes these lyrics to code and also goes to grad school, you know? Right?
That is unique.
That, you know, that's me, and that's what I share. And you have to be really consistent. So, you know, I post about what I post about, but you're not going to see a post about me at the bar with my friends at night, because that's not what my page is about. And then a really big part of why I think that my following has stayed and been consistent is engagement. So whenever I get comments on my photos, you know, lately it's been a little hard for me to keep up, but I reply to all of them.
Wow.
If I get messages, DMs, I reply to all of them. And people, so I post in my stories a lot, so people are always, you know, giving me comments about that. I reply. I, you know, am a real person, so I let people understand that by actually replying to them. I think some people try to, they're a little narcissistic about it. You know, they're like, I just want to show me.
It's like a look at me kind of thing.
Right.
Exactly.
It's a one-way conversation versus
exactly. And I think that the fact that I make it a two-way thing and recognize people makes it so that more people want to follow and engage and see what I have to say, because they know that if they have any questions, they're going to get answered. Sometimes I don't have all the answers, but I'm frank about that too. I'll be like, I don't know about that, but maybe I can try and find somebody who does, or maybe I can't. But I just try to be very forward about everything that I want to say. So
cool.
Yeah, that helps a lot. And also becoming part of a community. So there's like a lot of girls and guys who are very active on Instagram as well in the computer science tech realm. And so we've created this like community of people that we engage with each other. We'll be like, oh, look at so-and-so's post. And that's not something where we're like, oh, hey, in their DMs, will you repost my picture?
Yeah.
It's nothing like that. It's usually like we just do it because we like what the other person has to say. And there's actually a lot of people on Instagram that have sent me things over mail.
Yeah.
They've sent me gifts.
Aww,
And
that's cute.
yeah, it's really great. There's a bunch of people that I've met in person. And so, like, meeting in person after being these, like, online friends kind of, like, makes that bond a little bit stronger. And I have to admit that everybody that I've met in person so far has been really cool. You know, you always get that kind of, like, nervous feeling like, oh, what if they're fake on social media and they're totally, you know, meanie head in person.
Meanie head.
Right? So they're not meanie heads, and they're totally real people too, and it's been really awesome just like finding this whole other realm of like networking and getting to know people, and I've collaborated on blogs with people. Like it just turns into this awesome community, so definitely engagement is a big part of it.
Well, that's awesome and a great way to end this episode. So, Jamie, before we go, how can people find you on social media?
So I am Instagram based. That is me, just Queen IG. My Instagram handle is Berger with a side of code. All one word, all lowercase, and Berger is spelled with an E instead of a U because it is my last name, not the sandwich. So Berger with a side of code.
Awesome.
Nice.
As always, you can find us on our website at modernfigurespodcast.com. You can ask us questions via email at askus@modernfigurespodcast.com. And you can find Kyla and I on Twitter at Dr_Kyla for Kyla. Yes, and I'm at Jeremy Waysome. So until next time, drink some water, eat some vegetables.
And be extra, like guacamole.
Because guacamole adds quality and isn't just extra for no reason.